Celestial Dragon transmitted another message, this time to Axion. His command was clear: accelerate the plan and ensure Theo was dealt with swiftly. Meanwhile, the Sword Dragon, her sharp eyes catching the barely concealed tension between the Elder and Celestial Dragons, quietly observed their exchange. Turning to the Demon Dragon, she voiced her suspicions. The High Council, she remarked, and their secretary, they're plotting something. We need to lay a safety net before this spirals out of control. The Demon Dragon, however, dismissed her concerns with a dismissive wave. Theo Ragnar is no ordinary contender, he said with a smirk. Interfering is pointless. He won't fall so easily. He cast her a knowing glance before adding, besides, didn't you meet with Theo in secret? Care to explain that? The Sword Dragon chuckled softly, her composure unshaken. What matters now, she replied, is not my meeting with him, but how Theo feels about all of this. Emotions, Demon Dragon. Sometimes they matter more than strength. Elsewhere, Theo pressed forward, the compass in his hand leading him deeper into the cavern's cold, uninviting depths. Twisted skeletons littered the path before him, their grotesque forms illuminated by faint, flickering light. Each step was deliberate, his gaze unwavering, as he anticipated the divine traps awaiting him. These trials, designed to break one's sanity, would have driven most to madness. For Theo, however, they were mere obstacles, puzzles to be solved. Pausing to place a hand on the icy wall, Theo felt an unfamiliar surge of energy ripple through him. This divine power, laced with mana, heightened his senses and sharpened his instincts. He could feel it coursing through his body, like a second heartbeat. As the energy built, a golden glow began to seep from the depths ahead, revealing the faint outline of a concealed entrance. Theo's lips curled into a faint smile. So, this is the path, he murmured, reassured that the compass hadn't led him astray. What lay ahead, however, defied his expectations. Beyond the gate, instead of the modest lair of a young dragon, a sprawling cavern of unimaginable grandeur awaited him. Towers of gold stretched toward the ceiling, their gleaming surfaces reflecting the faint light with dazzling intensity. At the heart of this treasure trove lay a massive, slumbering dragon. Its enormous form radiated power so immense that Theo's breath caught in his throat. This wasn't the lair of a young dragon as he'd expected. It was the home of an ancient one. Theo froze, his mind racing as dread crept in. The sheer mystic presence of the creature blanketed the space, making every hair on his body stand on end. He knew with absolute certainty that facing this dragon would lead to certain death. The idea of obtaining Amon's relic felt like an impossibility now, overshadowed by the realization of his own fragility. His thoughts whirled. Was the information he'd received wrong? Or had he arrived too early? Had Huel deliberately misled him? Whatever the truth, one thing was clear. This situation was far beyond anything he'd prepared for. After a brief deliberation, Theo made the only rational choice: retreat. Turning away from the treasure and the slumbering behemoth, he resolved to leave quietly before the dragon awoke. But as he took his first step back, the unexpected happened. A low rumble filled the cavern, and Theo froze, spinning around to find the dragon's massive eyes open and locked onto him. Somehow, without making a sound, the ancient creature had stirred and was now staring at him with an intensity that made the very air tremble. Theo's heart sank as the dragon's voice boomed through the chamber, resonating with an ancient, undeniable authority. The dragon's head tilted slightly, its golden eyes narrowing as it introduced itself. I am Lodbrok, the guardian dragon god and the master of this winter mountain. As Theo faced the dragon, he did the smartest thing and bowed down to the dragon, a testament to the dragon's power, and said, "It's an honor to be in your presence, Ancestor Dragon." Lodbrok was surprised on hearing the Ancestor Dragon from Theo and asked him, "Tell me, Theo Ragnar, why do you consider me as your ancestor?" Theo explained that the guardian dragon god had once been a companion of Sigurd, Ragnar clan's progenitor, and the supposed mother of the second clan head, Lord Fridleif, as the legends claimed. At this, Lodbrok let out a dry laugh. a sound so ancient and weighty it seemed to echo across the cavern like the unraveling of 1,000 years of misunderstandings. The dragon dismissed the notion outright, scoffing at the absurd tales that had been spread by Fridleaf. Humans and dragons? Life partners? Lodbrok's booming voice reverberated with disbelief. Utter nonsense. My bond with Sigurd was one of mutual respect. A pact of souls, nothing more. No romance, no sentimentality, only the cold, binding terms of a promise. From the very beginning, humans were never meant to be more than temporary allies to dragons, much less companions. Theo's astonishment deepened. Lodbrok's words dismantled everything he thought he knew about his family's lineage. Questions raced through his mind like wildfire. Slowly, he rose to his feet, his eyes locked onto the colossal form before him. After a moment of hesitation, he asked cautiously, "Then, the rumors about my family carrying dragon blood, are they nothing but propaganda?" The ancient dragon studied him with its unblinking golden eyes, its voice steady yet authoritative as it dispelled another myth. "No, the dragon's blood flows in your veins, but it is not what you think. Through the pact made with Sigurd, my essence was intertwined with your lineage. It is not born of love or kinship, but of duty. My bloodline sustains your family's strength, but only because of the bond forged long ago." Theo opened his mouth to press further, but Lodbrok raised a massive claw, cutting him off before the question could leave his lips. The dragon's patience was waning. "Enough. The formalities are over, and I grow tired of idle chatter," it declared, its voice like thunder. "I am the guardian dragon god, bound by my vow. You, Theo Ragnar, are the chosen one, and it is time for you to undertake my trial." Theo's pulse quickened as Lodbrok continued, outlining the nature of the trial. "You will face 3 questions. Questions that will test your resolve, your wit, and your purpose. Fail, and you will leave empty-handed. Succeed, and you may walk the path toward what you seek." Relief swept over Theo like a cool breeze on a sweltering day. For a moment, he feared he might have to face this ancient being in combat, a battle he knew he couldn't survive. Gratitude welled up within him, tempered by the weight of the opportunity before him. This trial wasn't just a challenge. It was a gateway to the secrets of his family's power. Resolute, he vowed to seize the moment and extract every fragment of knowledge he could from the ancient dragon. Outside the cavern, Axion was a whirlwind of destruction. His blade flashed with lethal precision, each swing carving through the beasts in his path. Another fell, its monstrous form collapsing with a heavy thud. Stooping down, Axion plucked a green bell from the creature's remains. Mentally tallying, he realized this was his 57th bell. Without a second glance, he tossed it to one of the soldiers trailing behind him and barked, "Report on Theo." "Now!" The soldiers exchanged uneasy glances before one laughed mockingly. "Theo? He's probably cowering somewhere, too scared to face the beasts," he sneered. The remark ignited a ripple of laughter. Yet Orion's eyes betrayed a more complicated emotion as he watched Axion in action. With grudging admiration, Orion silently acknowledged Axion's overwhelming strength. Each swing of his blade seemed almost effortless, dispatching beasts that would have sent lesser warriors running. To Orion, Axion's strength was undeniable, but his arrogance and recklessness grated on him like nails on stone. Before Orion could voice his thoughts, he found himself yanked off the ground with terrifying ease. Axion had seized him by the collar, his eyes blazing with a deadly fire. "What's your game, Orion?" Axion growled, his voice low and venomous. "Scheming behind my back? Or are you just too weak to speak the truth?" Panic seized Orion as he thrashed in Axion's iron grip. "And no, I wasn't plotting anything," he stammered, his voice rising to a desperate shriek, but his wide eyes, filled with terror, betrayed far more than his frantic words ever could. Axion leaned in closer, his voice dripping with menace. "Strength banishes fear," he said coldly. "Remember that. True power makes fear irrelevant. If you're weak, you're nothing but prey." Just then, a soldier cautiously approached, interrupting the tense moment. "Sir," the soldier reported a message from the higher-ups. "They want you to expedite the plan." Axion released Orion with a shove, his focus shifting. As Orion scrambled to steady himself, Axion's expression darkened. "Then it's time to finish this," he said, his voice as sharp and unyielding as his blade. Meanwhile, deep within the cavern, Theo Ragnar stood beneath the imposing gaze of the ancient dragon, Lodbrok. The silence between them was thick, almost suffocating, as Theo considered the gravity of his first question. He let out a deep breath, the sound echoing faintly in the immense chamber. Finally, he spoke, his voice steady despite the storm of thoughts swirling in his mind. "I'm ready to ask my first question." Lodbrok, visibly unimpressed, huffed, its massive scales shimmering in the dim light. "Well, don't keep me waiting, boy. You've already wasted enough of my time," it growled, its tone dripping with the kind of impatience that suggested it had better things to do, like guarding the world from ancient horrors or binge-watching its favorite celestial dramas. Lifting his gaze, Theo asked, "Why are you here?" It was a question that had weighed on him ever since their encounter, and he braced himself for the answer. The dragon's glowing eyes narrowed as if appraising the value of Theo's inquiry. "Ah, a foundational question," Lodbrok mused, its voice resonating with an ancient authority. "Very well. I am here because of a monster, one that exists at the edge of the world, beyond the seas. It is called the Nameless King." The dragon's tone turned somber as it continued. "For the past 1,000 years, my mission has been to guard against this creature's return. The Winter Mountain," it added with a dry chuckle, "is merely a facade, a bedtime story to keep meddling fools at bay." Theo's mind raced as the truth unraveled. The Nameless King. Even the name sounded like something ripped straight out of a mythic horror novel. Yet, if the tales were true, this creature instilled fear even in Lodbrok, a being that had reigned for over a millennium. The realization sent a shiver down Theo's spine, though he quickly shoved his apprehension aside. There were more questions to ask, and time wasn't on his side. After a moment of reflection, Theo posed his second question. "What exactly is the relic of the ancient dragon?" Lodbrok tilted its head, as if mildly amused by the simplicity of the question. "Ah, the relics. A fragmented story for a fragmented soul," it began. "There are 3 relics tied to my existence. Or so you think." Theo's brow furrowed at the cryptic remark, but he didn't interrupt. "The relics," Lodbrok explained, "are fragments of my soul. 31 pieces scattered across this world to aid humanity in their fight against the Nameless King. They can manifest as items, experiences, or even phenomena." Theo's breath hitched as the revelation hit him like a thunderbolt. The 3rd relic he carried, it wasn't just an artifact. It was his ability to regress. Suddenly, everything clicked into place, like the final piece of an impossibly complex puzzle. But one question still burned in his mind. If these relics were always guarded by dragons, why had he found none protecting his regression? Gritting his teeth, Theo pushed his confusion aside and asked the final, most personal question. "Why was I chosen?" His voice cracked slightly as he gazed up at Lodbrok, his doubt laid bare. "Why me? Why burden someone like me with the task of facing the Nameless King?" The dragon stared at him for a long moment, its expression unreadable. Slowly, it approached, each step reverberating through the cavern like a distant drumbeat. When it finally spoke, its words weren't an answer but a question. "Why do you think you're the only one chosen?" The question struck Theo like a lightning bolt. His knees felt weak, his pulse quickened, and a cold sweat broke out across his brow. Was it possible? Could there be others like him? Names and faces began flashing through his mind. Ed Curson, the Black Dragon. Both individuals with knowledge of the relics and ambitions to gather them. Were they also chosen? Had they experienced regression just like him? The thought circled Theo's mind like a predator hunting its prey, leading him to an unsettling realization. This world was far more intricate and enigmatic than he had ever dared to imagine. A nameless king, so terrifying that even an ancient dragon quaked at the thought of him, and the suggestion of others like him, regressors, painted a picture far darker than he was prepared for. The truth of this reality wasn't just hidden. It was a labyrinth of secrets. Breaking the silence, Lodbrok's voice cut through Theo's spiraling thoughts. It affirmed that all three of Theo's questions had been answered and declared his trial complete. But then came a revelation that shook the air like a crack of thunder. The dragon admitted its original purpose here, to claim the relic of Amon for itself. Yet now it had changed its mind. What it intended to offer Theo was something far greater, something beyond the value of any trinket. At that moment, Theo's system chimed in, the cold, emotionless voice delivering the update. Congratulations! You have completed the hidden quest. Your reward is the chance to claim the treasures of the ancient dragon. The dragon gestured with one massive claw toward the glimmering hoard within its lair. The sheer sight of it was overwhelming. A kaleidoscope of priceless gems, relics imbued with untold power, shimmering elixirs, ancient skill tomes, and legendary weapons that seemed to hum with their own energy. Lodbrok elaborated with an air of pride, detailing the treasures as relics from all corners of the world. It then turned its piercing gaze back to Theo and extended an offer. Choose, it said. Take anything you desire, and it shall be yours. Theo's heart surged with excitement, the kind that made his blood roar in his ears. Without hesitation, he locked eyes with the dragon and made his choice. His voice rang out, firm and unyielding. I want you. Lodbrok froze, its ancient body stiffening in sheer disbelief. Its eyes, glowing like molten gold, widened as it echoed Theo's request aloud, almost as if to ensure it hadn't misheard. The chamber descended into a heavy silence, broken only by the dragon's low, rumbling laughter, a sound like an approaching storm. The dragon's eyes gleamed with a mixture of curiosity and derision, the kind of look a chess master might give a novice who had just made a bold but foolish move. Its laughter grew darker, resonating like distant thunder. You dare? It growled, its voice laced with mockery, the edges of its mouth curling into a predator's sneer. As the dragon's enormous gaze pinned him, Theo's expression sharpened. His mind worked like a gambler calculating odds, every detail in the chamber feeding into his next move. His eyes flicked to the treasure hoard, then to the ancient beast perched at its peak, radiating absolute command. With a faint sigh, he tilted his head slightly, as if annoyed at the theatrics. The dragon hissed, its voice cutting through the air like a knife. Explain yourself, human. Is this a joke? Theo's response was unwavering, his tone calm and resolute. Correct, he stated, meeting the dragon's glare without flinching. Lodbrok's reaction was immediate, its colossal wings unfurled with a deafening humph, the sheer force of the motion sending shockwaves that rattled the chamber. Theo staggered, his feet sliding as he fought to keep his balance against the oppressive gale. The dragon loomed larger, its ancient presence crashing down on Theo like the weight of a skyscraper. The dragon's voice boomed, dripping with contempt. Audacious worm, it snarled, each word sharp as a blade. Do you truly think you can stake a claim on me? On my power? With your pitiful words? The accusation hung heavy in the air, the pressure making Theo's knees tremble. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but he stood firm. Gritting his teeth, he fought against the overwhelming force. His vision blurred as blood pooled at the corners of his mouth, but his eyes blazed with unrelenting defiance. Summoning every ounce of his will, Theo tapped into his own draconic essence. A faint blue aura flickered to life around him, fragile yet determined, like a candle refusing to be extinguished by a hurricane. Lodbrok sneered, its disdain as palpable as the crackling energy around it. The dragon's voice oozed mockery. Pathetic, it scoffed. Do you think the faint glow of a lesser drake will intimidate me? Your effort is nothing but an ember against a wildfire. The dragon's massive form leaned forward, its growl reverberating through the chamber. Your attempt is futile, it declared, each syllable heavy with centuries of superiority. You will learn that standing against me is not boldness. It is suicide. Theo stood his ground, unwavering, his voice steady as steel as he reminded Lodbrok of the promise made. A promise granting him the right to claim any treasure in the lair. He pointedly noted that no boundaries had been defined, leaving open the possibility that even the dragon itself could be claimed as part of that treasure. For a brief moment, a flicker of surprise danced across Lodbrok's piercing eyes, a reaction to the sheer boldness of Theo's words. But Theo's resolve was unshakable. He knew the line he tread was perilously thin, straddling courage and madness. Yet his decision was absolute. No gilded chest or arcane artifact could compare to the honor of winning the dragon's allegiance. "Keep your word," he demanded, his voice laced with both challenge and determination. "Stand by my side as the ultimate prize." For a long, tense moment, Lodbrok's intense gaze bore into Theo. Then, almost imperceptibly, a subtle shift softened the dragon's expression, as though a distant memory had surfaced, perhaps of another human who had once stood before it with similar boldness. The defiance in Theo's eyes seemed to strike a chord, igniting a faint smile that curved the dragon's lips ever so slightly. The silence lingered, heavy and profound, before Lodbrok exhaled a deep, rumbling breath. Amusement flickered in its golden eyes, mingling with reluctant acceptance. "Very well," the dragon murmured, its tone carrying both resignation and intrigue. Theo froze, his thoughts scrambling to catch up. Did that just happen? Did Lodbrok truly agree? He remained rooted to the spot, dumbfounded, as the dragon's colossal form began to dissolve into swirling mist. The ethereal glow of its eyes lingered, emanating a profound yet melancholic power, before fading completely into the fog. When the mist cleared, a new figure emerged, a regal, otherworldly woman with horns that hinted at her draconic lineage. Her presence was mesmerizing, an embodiment of both strength and grace, as though every detail of her being had been carefully crafted to redefine beauty itself. The remnants of the mist clung to her form, enhancing the ethereal aura she radiated. She stepped closer, her gaze meeting Theo's with a spark of amusement. A soft chuckle escaped her lips as she teased, "Awestruck already? How charming." Her playful demeanor shifted, however, as her expression turned solemn. Her voice, tinged with sadness, revealed fragments of her story. She admitted to being over 2,000 years old, but confessed that her heart had been lost 50 years ago. With a weary sigh, she spoke of the binding that tied her to the nest and the bittersweet reality of her remaining time, only 3 short years. Her gaze turned pointed, her question clear and direct. "Knowing this, would you still want me as your prize?" Theo inhaled deeply, steadying himself. A confident grin spread across his face as he met her eyes, his conviction unshaken. "Absolutely," he replied without hesitation. Lodbrok shook her head, a resigned expression playing across her features. "Foolish human," she muttered, though her words carried a subtle undertone of acknowledgement. Beneath her exasperation, there was a flicker of understanding, perhaps even admiration, for his determination. Stubbornness, after all, was a trait befitting someone worthy of a dragon's allegiance. Suddenly, Theo's system chimed in, a notification flashing before his eyes. "Congratulations! You have selected Ragnar's guardian dragon as your reward." Lodbrok raised an eyebrow, her lips curving into a sly smile. "You truly are one of a kind," she remarked, her tone dripping with amusement. Yet, in her gaze, there was a faint glimmer of pride. As system notifications buzzed with updates, Theo's attention was caught by his new titles: Guardian Dragon's Partner and Descendant of the Progenitor. The weight of his new role hit him like a lightning strike, but his determination only grew. His smirk widened, his eyes blazing with fiery intensity. "I'll get stronger," he vowed, his voice filled with an unyielding resolve. "And I'll uncover more relics tied to the primordial dragon." Then, with a playful edge, he added, "Who knows? Maybe I'll even find something to replace your lost heart." Lodbrok's eyes narrowed slightly, her intrigue unmistakable. Though skepticism lingered in her expression, a faint smile softened her features. "Then you'd better take good care of me," she said, her tone holding both warning and a touch of reluctant amusement. Her expression was laced with dry amusement, as if even she couldn't fully believe the agreement she had just made. Lodbrok reminded Theo that she couldn't leave the lair and would remain in hibernation until a solution to her missing heart was found. Before retreating into slumber, she conjured a glowing blue tome in her hands, her demeanor unexpectedly gentle as she placed it firmly against his chest. Locking eyes with him, her voice carried a quiet authority. "Read it," she instructed. "It will unlock your mind gate and forge a true soul link." Gesturing around her expansive lair, she motioned to the scattered resources. With a sly smirk, she added, "You've got everything you need here, so take your time." As her majestic form began to fade, a system notification materialized before Theo. "You have acquired the Grimoire of Amon." Theo's breath hitched as his gaze dropped to the tome now resting in his hands. This wasn't just any book. It was the Grimoire of Amon, a fabled relic whispered about in legends. It was said to contain the primordial truths of sound, principles that birthed existence itself, and the sacred notes that resonated with creation's essence. A grin tugged at Theo's lips as he tightened his grip on the ancient tome. Casting a glance toward Lodbrok's slumbering form, he murmured under his breath, determination hardening his features. Becoming the guardian dragon's chosen companion wasn't a role to be taken lightly, and he swore to prove himself worthy of the honor. His confidence wavered slightly as he nervously asked, "Wait, what did you mean by 1 month?" Without so much as a glance, Lodbrok's voice drifted through the air. Her response weighted like ancient gold. "That's how long it will take to fully awaken your mind gate." Her tone was casual, almost dismissive, as if she were discussing the weather. Theo swallowed hard as the gravity of her words hit him like a tidal wave. 1 month. His pulse quickened as the implications sank in. "But I don't have that kind of time," he thought, panic flashing across his face. With the second stage of the awakening ceremony already in motion, he only had 15 days to finish the exam. Every second counted. Desperation clawed at his resolve as he reasoned with her. "Maybe I can come back after I finish the ceremony?" he offered, his voice tinged with hope. Lodbrok's reply came with a soft chuckle, her amusement filling the air like a storm cloud waiting to break. Perched atop a treasure chest like a queen on her throne, she crossed her legs with an air of regal indifference. "Not a chance," she said, her voice dangerously smooth. Her tone carried a sharp edge, taunting and absolute. "You'll stay here until your mind gate is open." Theo's stomach churned as the realization set in. There was no room for negotiation. A quick mental calculation only deepened his despair. He had 13 days left, just 310 hours, until the exam ended. While other students were out there earning bells, honing their combat skills, and battling beasts, he was stuck here. Instead of fighting, his days would be consumed by the cryptic process of awakening his mind gate, all under the unyielding gaze of a 2,000-year-old dragon who seemed to find his plight endlessly entertaining. Fast forward to 3 days before the exam deadline. Snow blanketed the grounds of the Central Intelligence Bureau, but the icy chill in the air wasn't just from the weather, it radiated from Axion's uncle. His sinister grin was enough to make a hardened soldier reconsider their life choices. Wide-eyed like a deer caught in the headlights, as his uncle rummaged through a box and retrieved a small, seemingly harmless marble. But in this world, nothing is harmless. With a theatrical pause worthy of a movie villain, his uncle held the marble aloft and revealed its sinister purpose. "This little trinket," he drawled, "amplifies the energy of sealed fiends to create an anti-field. Keeps other fiends at bay." He crushed the marble in his fist, the act accompanied by an ominous crunch that echoed in the frozen air. What followed was nothing short of horrifying. A vortex of black and purple particles erupted, coalescing into a grotesque abomination. The creature took shape, towering and misshapen, with a maw so vast it could swallow Axion whole. Its eyes gleamed with malevolence, and its presence turned the atmosphere from icy to suffocating. Axion's heart thundered in his chest as the monstrosity loomed over him, its very existence a declaration of his uncle's ruthless intent. Before Axion could fully process the monstrosity in front of him, shadows erupted from his uncle's legs, coalescing into the shape of a dragon. In one swift and devastating bite, the fiend was obliterated, its remains vanishing like smoke in a gale. Axion stood frozen, caught between awe and the creeping existential dread that came with belonging to his terrifying family tree. His uncle, completely unfazed by the display of power, brushed the incident aside as though swatting a fly. With an air of casual menace, he laid out the next phase of their plan. The second stage's official objective? Eliminate fiends and rack up points. Simple enough. But Axion's true mission? Far less noble. The real goal was petty to the core. Lure Theo out using the marble as bait. Straightforward in theory, except Axion, ever the dramatist, had other ideas. Why stop at luring Theo when you could torture him first? Extract every last ounce of intel about the Rose Palace relic. But his uncle, eternal voice of reason and professional buzzkill, immediately shut down the scheme. Theo isn't someone you can toy with, Axion, he said with a knowing smirk. And restraint? Let's just say that's never been your strong suit. The jab earned him a glare so sharp it could cut steel. Axion's fists clenched, his knuckles cracking like popcorn in a fire. Left with no choice, Axion begrudgingly accepted Plan B. Target Theo's soft spot, his allies from Training Ground 4. Present day, Axion's genius plan? Yeah, it was a disaster. Theo had completely ignored the bait. Instead of charging into the fray to rack up fiend points like a normal participant, Theo had pulled a Where's Waldo, disappearing off the map entirely. With only 12 hours left on the clock, Axion sat fuming, his frustration simmering hotter than lava. His measly rank of 860 points did little to soothe his bruised ego. Behind him, the arrival of Felix Ragnarar, a swordsman from Plum Blossom Palace, was announced by flashing lights. Felix, currently ranked 7th with 446 points, approached with the confidence of a wannabe detective. Maybe Theo's been captured by the council scoundrels, Felix suggested, his tone almost smug. Axion's glare was cold enough to turn magma into ice. Your insight, he sneered, is as trashy as your rank. Not content with just the insult, Axion twisted the knife deeper, mocking Felix's connection with Lady Plum Blossom. The jab struck a nerve. Felix's jaw clenched, and his fingers twitched as if ready to retaliate. But, swallowing his pride, Felix bit back his words and stepped aside. Axion dismissed him with a lazy wave. Enough of your drivel. It's time to force Theo out of hiding. Summoning members of the Scaled Dragon Society and Plum Blossom Palace, Axion put his latest scheme into motion. Hunt down Theo's allies one by one. Wicked grins spread across the faces of the Scaled Dragon members, their anticipation for carnage written in their feral eyes. Unbeknownst to Axion, someone else was eavesdropping from the shadows. Concealed behind a towering tree, Ray Ragnarar, ranked 3rd with 561 points, stood listening intently, his sharp gaze flickering with intrigue. Meanwhile, deep in the forest, the shrill cry of a dying lizard pierced the air, its final moments so unsettling they could have scored a horror movie soundtrack. A group of hunters stood triumphantly over its twitching corpse, the metallic tang of blood mingling with the earthy scent of moss. It wasn't just any lizard, it was a middle-low-class fiend, though its dramatic demise might have convinced the hunters otherwise. At the forefront, or at least trying to be, was Sibaldry, ranked 68th with a paltry 31 points. His yellow demon bell, clutched tightly like a child's security blanket, was a pitiful trophy from an earlier victory against an even less impressive fiend. His companions, Iadien, 53rd with 52 points, and Benat Ramiro, 62nd with 36 points, weren't faring much better. If points were currency, they'd all be in debt. Sybil hoisted the bell high, the symbol of their mediocrity, and sighed in frustration. With only 12 hours remaining, Theo, the supposed star of their group, was nowhere to be found. But Sybil's annoyance wasn't just about Theo's absence. It was also about their dwindling supplies, resources they had painstakingly rationed for him now seeming like a colossal waste. Eodo, the group's self-proclaimed theorist, chimed in with begrudging admiration. Theo's definitely up to something grand, he speculated, bitterness tinging his voice. While we're out here rolling around in the dirt for scraps, he's probably already rewriting the rankings. But the quiet didn't linger. Without warning, Orion Gardner emerged from the shadows like a phantom of death. Ranked 14th with a daunting 173 points. His sudden appearance was as chilling as the blade he wielded. He struck with precision, driving his sword into Sybil's back with a sickening crunch. Sybil froze, his triumphant grin morphing into wide-eyed horror as blood seeped through his clothes, staining the forest floor. Orion withdrew the blade with practiced ease, the fluidity of his motion disturbingly casual. His cold, unfeeling eyes regarded Sybil as though he were nothing more than a discarded pawn. Why? Eody's voice shattered the silence, trembling with both rage and fear. Orion, unfazed, twirled his sword in an almost theatrical display of arrogance. His lips curled into a cruel smirk as his gaze swept over the group, dripping with disdain. Why? He repeated mockingly, his tone filled with venom. Because you're nothing but sacrificial lambs in my grander scheme. The gleaming blade in his hand caught the dim light, casting ominous reflections on the faces of the horrified group. He raised it again, daring anyone to challenge him. The tension hung thick, suffocating, as none dared move against him. Meanwhile, deep within Lodbrok's lair, far removed from the chaos and bloodshed, Theo stood under the watchful gaze of the ancient dragon herself. The cavern's oppressive stillness was broken only by the weight of her golden eyes, which burned with an unsettling mix of curiosity and judgment. Her presence was monumental, her gaze heavy enough to crush even the most stalwart of mortals. When she finally spoke, her voice rolled through the cavern like distant thunder, carrying with it the weight of countless centuries. Your progress. It is remarkable, she rumbled, her tone betraying a faint undercurrent of approval. Even the most gifted prodigies would struggle to achieve what Theo had in under a month. Just as Theo was about to cross a critical threshold in mastering the Grimoire of Amon, a familiar system notification flickered before him. The message announced his partial mastery of the Grimoire, and a slow, confident smirk spread across his face. Always the overachieving, beast student, huh? Theo muttered to himself, a wry tone slipping into his voice. This world demanded perfection at every turn, and he had long since accepted the challenge. The Grimoire itself was infamous, its requirements so impossibly high that few ever dared attempt its secrets. It demanded immense mana reserves and a dragon's heart, an unthinkable combination for most. But Theo, uniquely positioned, had both. It allowed him to achieve the unachievable, his progress leagues ahead of what anyone else could dream. Yet the system, ever the unrelenting taskmaster, wasn't about to let him revel in his victory. Another notification popped up, cold and clinical. Skill acquired. Hatching Synchro, rank C. Theo's smirk faltered, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. He scoffed at the screen, glaring as if his disdain alone could rewrite the system's judgment. A rank C skill? After pushing himself to the brink of death? Sure, the ability to manipulate residual thoughts through psychokinesis sounded impressive on paper, but it wasn't the godlike firepower or reality-warping spells he had envisioned. Where were the earth-shattering explosions? The galaxy-bending feats? His grumbles echoed faintly through the cavern, drawing the attention of Lodbrok. The massive dragon opened her ancient eyes, her golden irises gleaming with faint disapproval. A heavy sigh escaped her as she regarded Theo with an air of quiet authority. Humans, she began, her voice calm yet cutting, always so quick to complain. You've barely scraped by. Just enough to meet the minimum standard of being my significant other. Theo blinked, her words leaving him momentarily dumbfounded. He opened his mouth to respond but found himself at a loss. Was this some kind of cosmic joke? A cruel twist of fate that had landed him in such a bizarre partnership? Before he could recover, Lodbrok's tone shifted, her words taking on a grave seriousness. Enough with your petty frustrations, she chided. Your time is limited. My recovery is bound to a 2-year deadline. If you fail to prioritize my revival... She paused, her golden eyes boring into his with a weight that threatened to crush him. We both die. Our fates are now intertwined. You cannot afford to falter, Theo. Theo wasn't about to crumble under the weight of a dragon's decree. A grin tugged at his lips, sharp and defiant, as he locked eyes with Lodbrok. Guess you're stuck with me now, he declared, his determination settling like an unshakable foundation. Lodbrok's golden gaze burned with an intensity only millennia could forge. So be it, she said, her voice ringing like an ancient hymn. Smoke curled around Theo, thick and alive, as she invoked the primordial covenant. When her final roar shook the heavens, her massive form dissipated, leaving Theo alone on a windswept cliff. The vast snowfield stretched out before him, a glacial abyss that mirrored the chaos in his mind. The biting wind tugged at his hair as his gaze swept across the horizon. Only 12 hours. That's all he had to claw his way out of this. He exhaled a plume of frosty frustration, muttering under his breath, "The universe really loves setting me up for failure." He lashed out at the snow, kicking it into the air like an explosion of frosty confetti. The satisfying crunch under his boot didn't ease the weight pressing down on him. Hunting fiends? Laughable. Compared to the stakes he faced, it felt like prepping for a neighborhood snowball fight while standing at the edge of a war zone. Failure wasn't just breathing down his neck, it was tap dancing on his back. First place? It wasn't slipping away. It had turned into Usain Bolt, sprinting into the distance with Theo left choking on dust and regret. Then, like a match struck in the dark, an idea sparked. His thoughts drifted back to that ceremony. Axion, his rival, the smirking predator who had seized the top rank with ruthless precision. The memory slapped him awake, the sting sharp and cold as the winter wind. If Theo wanted to win, hunting tokens wouldn't be enough. He needed a strategy that wasn't just clever but ruthless. The idea of stealing bells from others took root, curling its dark tendrils around his thoughts. His lips twitched into a bitter smile, the kind that tasted like defeat and resolve all at once. Heroics? They'd never get him anywhere in this game. The bitter truth dug deeper. This wasn't just a plan. It felt like standing at the edge of villainy, peering into the abyss. Theo shook his head, trying to steel his resolve. Then, like a shard of glass piercing the silence, a rustling sound snapped Theo back to reality. His head whipped toward the noise, every sense suddenly razor-sharp. Out of the shadows stumbled a figure, their unsteady steps carving gruesome crimson streaks into the snow. Theo's breath caught as the metallic tang of blood hit the air. But it wasn't just the sight of their wounds that churned his gut. A voice broke the frozen stillness, soft but as cutting as broken ice. "Found you." Theo froze, his body stiff as stone, his veins iced over with dread. The words didn't just chill him, they sunk into his chest like claws. From the shadows, a presence emerged, heavy and suffocating, as if the forest itself recoiled in dread. The faint moonlight carved out a figure, a frail silhouette leaning against a tree, barely upright. Theo froze, his breath catching. "Ray?" he whispered, his voice trembling. His heart clenched as recognition set in. It was Ray Ragnar, her name an ache in his chest. She swayed unsteadily, her armor slick with blood that dripped onto the snow like dark ink bleeding across a blank canvas. Her trembling sword hung from limp fingers. Theo's legs moved before his mind could catch up. "Ray, what happened to you?" he asked, voice tight with worry. His eyes darted to her chest, where blood seeped from a deep wound, carving a grim pattern against the metal. That was no beast's mark. It was deliberate, human. His stomach twisted. Was this an attack? He murmured, his thoughts spinning. Who did this? "Ray, tell me." Her head barely lifted, and her lips parted as if it took everything in her to speak. "West. We need to go west." The words were a fragile thread holding her together, but it snapped. Her knees buckled, and she collapsed with a heart-wrenching cry that echoed through the forest. Theo lunged forward, catching her just before she hit the ground. Her blood smeared his gloves as he cradled her, his arms protective yet trembling. "Stay with me," he pleaded, his voice low and steady, though fear clawed at his composure. He gently lowered her to the snow, ensuring her fragile body wouldn't bear more weight than it could handle. His gaze locked onto the trembling sword still clutched in her weak hand. Without hesitation, he pried it from her grasp. The blade felt cold, unervingly alive, as though it carried a pulse of its own. A faint, eerie glow radiated from the bloodied steel. A sudden jolt ran through Theo. His system activated, the familiar interface flashing before his eyes. Dragon Egg synchronization skill activated. He stiffened as another notification appeared, reading the memories of Ray Ragnar. The forest blurred, the real world slipping away as a tide of fragmented memories engulfed his mind. The first image sharpened. Ray Ragnar, her fiery red eyes blazing with both frustration and determination. Her head hung low as if carrying an invisible weight. Something about her stance radiated defiance, but there was something else too. A question, an unspoken conflict tied to him. The memory dissolved, replaced by the scene of a snowy forest. A group huddled in tense whispers, their expressions veiled in unease. "He should have been here by now," one muttered, their voice a mix of worry and impatience. Another, a figure oozing arrogance, let out a low chuckle. "He will. The traps at Training Ground 4 will guide him straight to us, just like we planned." Like a lamb to slaughter, at the group center stood a leader whose composure was chilling. They observed a line of captives kneeling in the snow, their faces pale with fear and defeat. One guard hesitated, glancing nervously at the captives. "Do we really need to kill them?" Another stepped back, their voice trembling. They're innocent." The leader's lips curled into a cold smirk. "Innocence is irrelevant." Their blade hovered, glinting in the moonlight. "We don't need this many. 2 or 3 will do." The captives flinched, their terror palpable. A commanding voice cut through like a blade. "Enough!" The group turned as Ray Ragnar stepped into the clearing. The wind howled around her, snow swirling at her feet like an omen. Axion turned his sharp gaze toward Ray, his features a mask of cold disdain. His lips twisted into a cruel smirk, and his words, laced with venom, cut through the cold night air. "Well, if it isn't Ray Ragnar herself," he sneered. "What's this? Come to deliver a lecture? Or just to interfere?" Ray's steps were deliberate. Her voice rang out, calm yet unyielding, each word resonating with power. "This stops now," she declared. "Release them." The wind stilled, as if the very forest was holding its breath. Axion's smirk deepened, but there was a flicker of something darker behind his confidence. "Release them?" His tone dripped with mockery, yet his voice carried an edge of warning. "These are your demands?" He leaned forward slightly, his words a low snarl. "Let me make this clear, Ray. You don't have the power to dictate terms here. Walk away, before things turn ugly." Ray didn't flinch. Her voice came sharper, colder. "They're Theo's comrades. This is his fight, but your actions have crossed every line. You're finished." For a split second, Axion's arrogant veneer cracked. His eyes narrowed. "You've chosen him," Axion hissed. Theo sighed. "That's what this is about, isn't it?" Before the words fully left his lips, Ray moved. With a burst of speed, she launched herself into the air, her sword blazing with raw, untamed energy. The air crackled around her as she brought the weapon down in a devastating arc. Axion stepped back, his reflexes razor-sharp, his blade rising to meet hers. Their weapons clashed with an earth-shaking roar, sending sparks flying and the ground trembling beneath the sheer force of their blows. The battlefield erupted into chaos, the air alive with the symphony of clashing steel and raw power. Theo stood frozen, his mind whirling between the chaos unfolding before him and the barrage of system notifications blinking in his vision. Restricted access, missing state detected. Frustration burned in his chest, his voice trembling with the weight of everything crashing down on him. He turned to Ray, his tone sharp. How long have you known about this? Why didn't you tell me? Ray's expression softened, guilt flickering in her eyes. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was low and laden with regret. Axian's obsession with you began the moment the competition started, she admitted. When you didn't show, he used your comrades as bait. This was always about drawing you out. Her words hit Theo like a hammer. He staggered back, disbelief and anger warring on his face. Because of me, he whispered, the words barely audible. Ray stepped closer, her voice steadier now despite the weight of the truth. I didn't come here just to warn you, Theo. I came to stop him. For them and for you. Theo's frustration ignited into fury. Axian's name burned in his mind, a bitter reminder of betrayal and injustice. No more, he growled through gritted teeth. I'm not the same man you remember. Stepping forward, Theo's voice thundered, shattering the oppressive silence. Axian, where are my comrades? A cry echoed through the forest, cutting through the tension like a knife. He's here, a soldier shouted, stumbling into the clearing. Theo's at the northern cliffs. The camp stirred, the air thick with anticipation. The leader turned sharply, his gaze cold and calculating. Are you certain? He demanded. Yes, sir, the soldier panted. A sinister grin spread across Axian's face, his crimson eyes glowing with a twisted mixture of excitement and malice. He exhaled slowly, his voice low and venomous. So, Theo finally shows his face. His knuckles whitened as fury boiled within him, but before it could consume him entirely, a chilling voice echoed in his mind. Calm and calculated, it slithered through his thoughts like a serpent. Young Master Axian, it whispered, each word measured and deliberate. Do not let your rage blind you. The hostages are the key. Axian froze, the voice reeling him back from the brink. He exhaled sharply, forcing his smirk to return. Understood, he murmured. Theo, Ray's voice rang out, thick with desperation. Her bloodshot eyes caught the faint light, her battered face amplifying the raw anguish in her tone. Don't do it, she pleaded, stumbling toward him, her trembling hands outstretched. You can't face Axian alone. Tears streaked her bruised cheeks as she added, the Intelligence Bureau, they're overseers. They're with him. Satrap, Theo. They've made sure you'll have no way out. Theo's resolve momentarily faltered, her words striking deeper than he expected. Shock flickered across his face before his composure solidified again, unyielding as steel. But Ray's final plea made him pause, hesitation creeping into his stance. You can't fight them, she insisted, her voice trembling. You can't win against what's waiting for you. Her words hung like frost in the frigid air, sharp and biting. Theo stood silent, locked in an internal battle, reason clashing against his drive to act. Ray broke the tension, her voice strained and uneven. This isn't a test, Theo. This isn't some trial you can survive by sheer will. It's a slaughter, and you're walking into it alone. Forcing herself to steady, she tried again, her voice softer but urgent. Listen to me. Find the other overseers. Convince them to fight with you. Alone, you'll die. Together, maybe you have a chance. Theo shook his head, his jaw set in defiance. His voice cut through her plea like a blade. There's no time, he said, his tone final. He inhaled deeply, the icy air sharp in his lungs as his resolve crystallized. His gaze flicked to the blood-stained snow, a chilling reminder of the danger ahead. I'm grateful, Ree, he said, his voice calm but laced with urgency. But if I don't act now, my comrades will pay the price. I can't let that happen. Theo erupted, his voice cracking with anguish. I can't lose them, he shouted, memories of his comrades flashing before him. Their laughter, their shared dream of defeating the second blooming. Those moments now felt like cruel ghosts haunting him. Ray's voice turned bitter. You think I don't understand? She snapped. This is Ragnar, Theo. Survival demands sacrifice. That's our truth, our legacy. For a fleeting moment, Theo's mind flickered to a memory of his comrades' laughter, their vow to stand together. But those cherished moments felt impossibly distant now. Anger surged, and his voice lashed out. "Why?" he demanded. "Why do you always stand in my way, Ray? Why can't you let me do what I have to?" Her eyes widened in shock, his words hitting her like a blow. Pain etched itself into her face, and tears spilled down her bruised cheeks, hot and bright against the cold. But Theo stood firm, his breath heavy but his resolve unwavering. His gaze locked on the path ahead. Memories of the Rose Palace erupted into a blazing inferno, flames clawing at the dark sky like a living beast. The palace burned, its pristine walls crumbling into ash. From the shadows, a cold voice pierced the chaos, sharp and scornful. "The fool of Ragnar," it sneered, branding Theo a failure. "You carry this burden but have learned nothing." The air turned heavy and cold. A being of otherworldly power emerged, its glowing blue eyes piercing Theo as if unraveling every secret he held, shoulders trembling under the weight of emotion. Between them lay chaos, overturned crates, shattered objects, and crimson-stained snow telling a grim tale of violence, its polished surface smeared with blood. Nearby, a tiny bell rested, its crimson-streaked surface a cruel casualty of the mayhem. Kneeling, his hands trembling, he whispered a name that carried a chilling weight. Figures began to gather, rivals, allies, and legends, their names carrying immense weight. The tension mounted, the snow and wind forming a brutal stage for the looming battle. Hulkus, ranked 5th, loomed like a titan, his raw power radiating from his massive frame. Erica, her fiery red hair braided with precision, exuded poise and might, her rank and score a symbol of dependable strength. Remington Nario, ranked 2nd, carried a quiet authority that belied his overwhelming power. The pieces of an inevitable confrontation were falling into place. Suddenly, a thunderous roar shattered the frozen air. Emerging from the smoke, a colossal creature appeared, its towering frame rippling with monstrous power. Swinging its massive club, it unleashed a devastating force that tore the ground apart. Theo stood firm, gripping his sword tightly. The blade gleamed in the pale light as he surged forward with blinding speed, his strikes precise and unrelenting. Each swing carried the silent menace of his resolve, urging his enemies to step aside or face annihilation. A fleeting thought crossed Theo's mind. Perhaps Seal and the hostages were still alive. Analyzing the chaos, Theo realized the grim truth. Axion was colluding with the overseers, and at the center of it all stood Ed, the architect of this deadly trap. The betrayal burned in Theo's chest, fueling his rage. With a forceful swing of his sword, crimson energy erupted, splitting the battlefield. "Dragon's third claw," he muttered, unleashing the devastating attack as fissures cracked through the icy ground. The overseers sent by Axion were no accident. Their calculated arrival was designed to end Theo's life. But instead of despair, Theo's fury sharpened his focus. As the massive creature closed in, its roars shaking the battlefield, Theo charged forward. Narrowing his gaze, Theo locked eyes with his monstrous adversary. He was prepared for this. With a thunderous leap, Theo's blade became a storm of vengeance. Each strike landed with explosive ferocity, sending crimson torrents arcing through the air to stain the once pristine snow. The brutal rhythm of combat was relentless, every swing a testament to his unshakable determination. Not far away, Axion towered, his eyes burning like embers. His fists were relentless, each blow a calculated act of destruction. Frustration and disdain twisted his expression, his movements brimming with barely contained fury. Weakness disgusted him, futility enraged him. To Axion, those who dared oppose him were nothing more than echoes of failure waiting to be silenced. A cruel grin spread across his face as he delivered another devastating strike, his every move designed to assert dominance. His icy resolve hung in the air like a death knell, a promise, not a threat, that none who stood in his path would leave alive. As the tension built to a fever pitch, a voice, sharp and commanding, shattered the stillness. The director of the Intelligence Bureau's words echoed in Axion's mind, a reminder to stay the course. Axion's jaw tightened, the irritation in his narrowed eyes betraying his simmering rage. Yet he gave a curt nod, his bitterness palpable as he gripped his weapon and advanced. The cold steel in his hand seemed to echo the hollow resentment that burned within him, a grim reminder of betrayal and vengeance deferred. The battlefield hushed, the air thick with unease. A single name broke the silence, spoken with venom and weight. Theo. The sound rippled through the frigid expanse, reverberating like a drumbeat of destiny. Theo emerged from the shadows, his steps slow and deliberate, each one an unspoken challenge. Crimson eyes burned through the frozen air, their intensity unmatched. The sword in his hand reflected the cold light, its gleam a mirror of his unyielding will. He moved as though the battlefield belonged to him, a force of reckoning that no one could deny. Axion's lips curled into a sneer as he watched Theo approach. His irritation twisted into something darker, anticipation laced with fury. The long-awaited confrontation had begun, the tension so palpable it seemed to tighten the air around them. Finally, Axion muttered, his voice low but filled with menace. His words carried the weight of his frustration. Theo's response was silence. His bloodied face, stoic and unyielding, conveyed more than words ever could. The steadfast determination in his eyes mirrored the edge of his blade, sharp and relentless.